I never planned to be on the 40th floor that night. My badge only opened doors up to the 12th, but the elevator glitched, and somehow I stepped out into silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. That's when I heard it, crying. Not loud. Just soft, broken sounds, like someone trying hard to keep them in. The door to the corner office was open a crack. I should have walked away. Every instinct told me to walk away. Instead, my hand found the handle. She was sitting on the floor behind her desk, knees pulled to her chest, mascara tracing dark lines down her cheeks. Papers were scattered around her like she'd thrown them and regretted it. She looked up at me, this woman I'd only ever seen on elevator screens and quarterly reports, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she did something I never expected. She reached out, grabbed my hand like it was the only solid thing in the room, and whispered words that would change everything. Be my date tonight. I opened my mouth to ask why. She just shook her head, like the reason was too heavy to say out loud yet. If you've ever had one moment split your life into before and after, stay with me. This was mine. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You don't even know my name. Daniel, she said. From facilities. 3rd floor break room, every day at noon, turkey sandwich, always reading something on your phone like it matters more than the room around you. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, almost annoyed at her own tears. I know exactly who you are. I just never had a reason to say it out loud. I stood there, stunned into silence. She knew my name. She'd noticed me. My name is Victoria, she said, pulling herself up off the floor, smoothing down her blazer like armor sliding back into place. And tonight there's a shareholder gala. My ex-fiancé is going to be there. With someone new. My father will be there too, watching, waiting for me to fall apart in front 300 people who already think I got this company by inheritance instead of merit. Her jaw tightened. I need someone next to me who isn't going to ask for anything. Someone who isn't part of this world. So you want a stranger? I want someone real, she corrected, and something in the way she said it landed somewhere deep in my chest. I should have said no. I had every reason to say no, my job, the ocean of difference between us, the simple fact that I fixed the copier on her floor and she signed off on budgets larger than my entire life. But there was something in her eyes, some quiet plea underneath the composed executive mask, and I heard myself say, okay. Her shoulders dropped an inch, like she'd been holding her breath for an hour. Okay? Okay. I'll be your date. She almost smiled. Almost. 2 hours later, a car picked me up from my apartment, a car nicer than anything I'd ever sat in, and drove me to a townhouse where a stylist waited with a suit that fit like it had been made for me, because apparently it had, tailored in an afternoon by people who did that sort of thing without blinking. When I walked out, Victoria was already in the car, in a deep emerald dress, her dark hair falling in soft waves over one shoulder. She looked up when I opened the door, and for a moment, her practiced composure slipped, just slightly. You clean up well, Daniel from facilities. You should see me fix a copier. Real showstopper. That earned a real laugh, quick and surprised, like it had escaped before she could stop it. We need a story, she said, recovering. How we met. What you do. Small things, easy to remember, hard to unravel. Let's keep it simple. We met at a coffee shop. You spilled your latte on me. I don't spill things. You do in this story. It's the only way I get to make you laugh in front of your father. She looked at me sideways, studying my face like she was deciding something. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. The car rolled to a stop outside a hotel lit up gold, doorman already reaching for the handles. Victoria's hand found mine on the seat, not for show, not yet, just for a second, like she needed something steady before stepping into the storm. Whatever happens in there, she said quietly, thank you for saying yes. I wanted to tell her that yes wasn't hard. That some small, reckless part of me had been waiting all night for a reason to say it. Instead, I just nodded. The doors opened. Camera flashes ignited like small explosions. And in the middle of it all, her father stood at the top of the stairs, watching us step out of the car together, his eyes narrowing the moment they landed on my face. Like he recognized me from somewhere he never expected to see me again. Her father's stare lasted only a second before he masked it with a practiced smile, the kind men like him wore for cameras. But I felt it. That flicker of recognition. I told myself I was imagining things, that a man like Richard Ashford, chairman of a company worth more than my entire hometown, had no reason to know a facilities worker's face. I was wrong. But I didn't know that yet. "Victoria, darling," he said, descending the stairs with his arms open, voice smooth as poured wine. "You didn't tell me you were bringing someone." "I didn't think I needed to clear my dates with the board," she said, and though her tone stayed light, I felt her hand tighten slightly around mine. Her father's eyes moved to me, assessing, cataloging. "And you are?" "Daniel," I said, extending my hand. "It's a pleasure, sir." He shook it, his grip firm, testing. "Daniel." "Just Daniel?" "Daniel Cole." Something passed behind his eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared, and then he laughed, clapping a hand on my shoulder like we were old friends. "Well. Any man who can put a smile on my daughter's face after the year she's had is welcome at my table." We moved past him into the ballroom, chandeliers scattering light across a sea of black tuxedos and jewel-toned gowns. Victoria exhaled slowly beside me. "That went better than I expected." "You were bracing for worse?" "I'm always bracing for worse. It's a survival skill in this family." I wanted to ask what that meant, but a waiter offered us champagne, and the room swept us into its current, handshakes, introductions, small talk about quarterly earnings that meant nothing to me. Through it all, Victoria stayed close, her fingers occasionally finding my sleeve, an anchor in a room full of strangers pretending to be friends. "You're doing well," she murmured at one point, leaning close enough that her breath warmed my ear. "Nobody's realized you don't know what an EBITDA margin is." "I know exactly what that is," I whispered back. "It's the thing you people invented to make small talk sound important." She laughed, really laughed this time, covering her mouth with her hand like she'd been caught doing something scandalous. A few heads turned. She didn't seem to care. "Careful," I said. "People are staring. Let them stare." It's the first time I've laughed at one of these things in 2 years. Something about the way she said it, quiet, almost surprised at her own honesty, made my chest ache in a way I didn't have a name for yet. Later, as the band shifted into something slow, she reached up without asking and straightened my tie, her fingers brushing my collarbone. "There. Now you actually look like you belong here." "I don't belong here. I'm just very good at borrowed suits." "Maybe belonging isn't about the suit." She looked up at me, and for a moment, the noise of the ballroom seemed to fall away, the clinking glasses, the murmured gossip, all of it fading until it was just her eyes, searching mine like she was asking a question she didn't have words for yet. "Victoria. Don't," she said softly, though she didn't step back. "Don't say something we can't take back tonight." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. I thought she was protecting some fragile peace between us, some careful line neither of us should cross while pretending. I didn't know she was protecting me from something else entirely, something waiting in the wings, watching us from across the room with narrowed eyes. A man in a charcoal suit had appeared near the bar, watching Victoria with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Her ex-fiancé. And beside him, someone I never expected to see at a gala like this, someone from my past, someone who knew exactly who I really was, and why her father's face had changed the moment he heard my last name. I recognized him before Victoria did. Marcus Vale, my old supervisor from the internship I did 3 years ago, back when I still believed a college degree and a good attitude would be enough to open every door. He'd been the one who fired me. Told me I wasn't cut out for corporate work, right before escorting me out of a building I'd cleaned floors in for 2 years to pay my way through school. Now he stood at the bar in a suit that cost more than my monthly rent, whispering something to the man beside him, Victoria's ex, Julian Wren, whose eyes hadn't left her since we walked in. Victoria. My voice must have carried something, because she turned, following my gaze. Her whole body stiffened. Julian's here early. You knew he'd be here. Knowing and seeing are different things. She squared her shoulders, the same way she had when she stood up off the floor of her office. Come on. Let's give him something to watch. She pulled me toward the dance floor before I could argue, her hand warm in mine, and for a moment I forgot about Marcus, about the internship, about everything except the way she fit against me like she'd done this 100 times, even though I was fairly certain neither of us had any idea what we were doing. You dance? She asked, surprised, as I actually managed not to step on her. 4 years of forced cotillion classes. My mother's one demand. Your mother sounds terrifying. She could probably fire your entire board and have them thank her for it. Victoria laughed again, that same unguarded sound, and rested her head slightly closer to my shoulder. I like her already. We moved slowly, turning under the golden light, and for those few minutes, the calculations and rehearsed lies fell away. This didn't feel like pretending anymore. Her hand tightened slightly in mine. Mine did the same without permission from my brain. Can I tell you something? She said quietly. Always. I haven't danced with anyone since Julian left. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't want to remember what it felt like to actually mean it. She looked up at me, vulnerability breaking through the polished exterior like light through a cracked window. I think I mean it right now. My heart slammed against my ribs. I opened my mouth, to say what, I still don't know, but that's when Marcus Vale appeared at the edge of the dance floor, drink in hand, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face. Daniel Cole, he said, loud enough for the nearby crowd to hear. I didn't realize facilities workers received invitations to events like this. The music seemed to fade. Victoria's hand went still in mine. I'm sorry, she said slowly, looking between us. You two know each other? Marcus's smile widened, savoring the moment like a man who'd been waiting years for it. Oh, we go way back, Miss Ashford. Your date used to work under me. Before I fired him for insubordination. I felt every eye on the dance floor turn toward us. Felt Victoria's father, somewhere across the room, go very still. And I felt Victoria's hand slip from mine, not in rejection, but like she was bracing herself for the ground to open beneath her feet. Insubordination, she repeated quietly, looking at me, waiting for an explanation I hadn't given her yet. That's not what happened, I said, keeping my voice steady even as the floor felt like it was tilting beneath me. I asked a question in a meeting I wasn't supposed to speak in. I pointed out an error in a report before it went to the board. Mr. Vale didn't appreciate being corrected by an intern. Marcus's jaw tightened. You cost the company nothing but your own job. I cost you the chance to take credit for a mistake that wasn't yours to hide. I hadn't meant to say it that sharply, but 3 years of swallowed anger had a way of surfacing at the worst possible moment. A small crowd had gathered now, phones lowering, conversations stalling mid-sentence. Victoria stood between us, her eyes moving from Marcus to me, searching for the shape of a truth I hadn't told her yet. You worked here, she said. Before facilities. I was an intern. In finance. For 8 months. My throat felt tight. I found a discrepancy in a report Marcus was presenting to the board. Small, but real. He told me to bury it. I didn't. He fired me the next morning and made sure no finance department in the city would touch my resume afterward. Facilities was the only job that would hire me without asking questions. The silence that followed felt endless. "Why didn't you tell me?" Victoria asked, quiet enough that only I could hear it. "Because tonight wasn't about me. It was about getting you through this without falling apart. My history wasn't supposed to matter." "It matters," she said, and something in her voice cracked, not with anger, but with something closer to grief. "Everything about you matters, Daniel. That's the problem." Before I could answer, Julian stepped forward from the small crowd, smooth and smiling in the way of men who'd never once doubted their place in a room. "Well, this is fascinating. Victoria Ashford, slumming it with the help. Very on brand for your rebellious phase." "Don't," Victoria said, and for the first time all night, her voice carried real steel. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Julian's eyes flicked to me, dismissive. "This little charity project of yours is cute, but we both know how this ends." I felt something hot rise in my chest, but before I could speak, Victoria stepped in front of me, close enough that I could see her hands trembling, not with fear, but with barely restrained fury. "You don't get to talk about him like that," she said. "You don't get to talk about anyone like that. You lost the right to have an opinion about my life the day you decided a merger was more interesting than our wedding." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Julian's smile faltered for the first time. "Victoria. We're done here." She turned to me, her eyes glassy but fierce. "Daniel, will you take me home?" I nodded, and as we walked away, past Marcus's stunned silence, past her father's unreadable expression, past 300 people who would be gossiping about this by morning, I felt her hand slide back into mine, gripping tighter than before. But I also saw her father pull out his phone, already dialing someone, his eyes following us out the door with an expression I couldn't quite read. By the time we reached the car, Victoria was crying again, not the composed tears from her office, but something rawer, something that had been building for years and finally found a crack to escape through. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you got dragged into this." I didn't have an answer yet. I just held her hand the entire ride home, wondering what her father's phone call meant for both of us, and whether tonight was the beginning of something, or the end of it before it had even started. Monday morning came faster than I wanted it to. I hadn't heard from Victoria since Saturday night, since the quiet car ride home where neither of us said much, since she'd squeezed my hand at my apartment door and whispered, "I'll call you," before the car pulled away into the dark. No call came. Just silence, thick and uncertain, stretching across an entire weekend. I told myself it made sense. She had a company to run, a family to manage, a scandal to contain. I was a mop and a name badge. She was a name on the building. I was replacing a light fixture on the 8th floor when my supervisor found me, his face tight with something between confusion and warning. "Daniel. HR wants you upstairs." The walk to the executive floor felt longer than it ever had, my uniform suddenly feeling like a costume in a play I didn't remember auditioning for. I passed people who'd never looked at me twice before, and now they stared, whispered, looked away too quickly. HR sat me down in a small glass office and slid a paper across the desk. "Administrative leave, pending review. Inappropriate conduct with a board member," the woman said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's for your protection as much as the company's." I didn't do anything wrong. I understand this is difficult. But Miss Ashford is currently in a meeting with the board, and until that concludes, it's best you're not on the premises. My chest tightened. "Is she okay?" The woman's expression flickered, something almost sympathetic breaking through the corporate script. "I can't discuss that with you." I left the building that afternoon with a box that didn't need packing, since nothing in that job had ever really belonged to me except a name tag and the quiet dignity of showing up every day. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time, staring at the elevator I'd taken by accident just 5 days ago, the one that started all of this. My phone buzzed. Not Victoria. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Leave her alone. You're not part of this world, and you never will be. Save yourself the embarrassment. J. Julian. Of course. I should have deleted it. Instead, I sat there staring at the words, feeling that old, familiar voice creep back in, the one that told me I didn't belong in rooms like the one I'd danced in Saturday night, that Marcus had been right 3 years ago, that people like me were meant to fix copiers and replace light fixtures and stay quietly out of the way of people like her. For a moment, I almost believed it. Then I thought about her hand in mine on the dance floor. The way she'd said everything about you matters like it cost her something to admit it. The way she'd stood between me and Julian without a second of hesitation, fury blazing in her eyes on my behalf. That wasn't nothing. Whatever came next, that hadn't been nothing. I drove home instead of wallowing in the garage, and that evening, as I sat at my kitchen table eating dinner alone, my phone rang. Not a text this time. A call. Victoria's name lit up the screen, and my heart climbed into my throat before I even answered. Daniel, she said, her voice thick, unsteady in a way I'd never heard from her. I need you to come back to the office. Tomorrow morning. The board meeting isn't over yet, they're deciding what to do about us, about the company, about everything. And I am done letting other people write the ending to my story. Victoria, what are you asking me to do? There was a pause, long and heavy, before she answered. I'm asking you to stand beside me one more time. Not as a fake date. Not as a favor. Her voice broke slightly. As exactly who you are to me. The boardroom on the 40th floor looked nothing like it had the night I first wandered into it by accident. No scattered papers, no tears in the dark. Just 12 people in tailored suits seated around a long table, and Richard Ashford at its head, his face unreadable as I walked in beside his daughter. Victoria wore a charcoal suit instead of a gown, her hair pulled back, every inch the CEO the tabloids love to underestimate. But her hand found mine once, briefly, under the table as we sat down, a small, private promise before the storm. Miss Ashford, one board member began, we're here to discuss concerns regarding a conflict of interest and conduct unbecoming of. Let me stop you there, Victoria said, her voice calm but unwavering. Before this goes any further, I want to say something, and I want it on record. The room went quiet. Her father's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. 3 years ago, this company buried a financial discrepancy that Daniel Cole discovered and refused to hide. Marcus Vail fired him for it and blacklisted him from an entire industry to protect himself. She placed a folder on the table, the same report, I realized, the one I'd found all those years ago, somehow recovered. I had our internal audit team pull the original documentation this weekend. Daniel was right. Marcus was wrong. And rather than correcting that mistake 3 years ago, this company let an honest man lose everything while a dishonest one kept climbing. Gasps rippled around the table. Marcus, seated near the far end, went pale. As for the personal matter, Victoria continued, her voice softening just slightly, though it never wavered, Daniel is not a scandal. He is not a mistake, and he is not a controversy to be managed. He is the first honest thing that has happened to me in this building in over 2 years, and I will not apologize for that, to this board or to anyone. She turned, briefly, and looked at me, really looked at me, like she needed me to hear the next part directly. I don't know what happens next, for either of us. But I know I'm done pretending certain things for the comfort of people who've never once had to fight for anything real. The room sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, one board member began to clap. Another followed. Even her father, after a long moment, allowed something like pride to crack through his composed expression. Marcus was asked to leave the meeting before it concluded. I later learned he was let go entirely by the end of that week. Afterward, Victoria found me in the lobby, the late afternoon sun spilling gold across the marble floor, the same lobby where 3 years ago I'd walked out carrying a cardboard box and a bruised sense of who I was allowed to become. So, she said, a small, nervous smile tugging at her lips, no gala tonight. No performance. No story we need to rehearse in the car. No story to rehearse, I agreed, stepping closer. I was thinking, she said, maybe you'd like to take me to dinner. As yourself. As Daniel Cole, the man who once found the truth nobody wanted to hear, and told it anyway. I'd like that, I said, and for the first time since that night on the 40th floor, neither of us was performing anything at all. Just two people, finally standing in the truth of what they'd found in each other. Because sometimes the most unexpected door you walk through by accident turns out to be the one that leads you exactly where you were always meant to be. If this story moved you even a little, make sure you're subscribed, because there are so many more waiting to be told, and I don't want you to miss the next one.